You guys have ski plans this winter?
Actually, yes.
Where are you guys going and when?
We are doing New Year's in West Virginia.
Okay.
And then we're going to Colorado over spring break. And we're going to Michigan, I think between the two.
Somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Where in West Virginia?
Snowshoe.
Snowshoe, okay.
Yeah.
Which
The Snowshoe.
the primary one, I think.
Yeah.
Have you been there before?
Not since I was a teenager, so I don't remember it hardly at all.
Yeah. I've not been. I know a few people have gone. I'm just curious, do they have much snow right now?
I looked the other day, and their official, I think, open day was today.
Oh, okay.
So
probably making more.
Correct.
Yeah.
They've been making snow.
And then where are you going in Colorado?
We're Arapahoe Basin and somewhere else.
Okay.
Kind of that area.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, hopefully there's plenty of snow. I know they've gotten a fair amount so far.
Right.
Hopefully that continues by spring break, that it's still powdery, not soup.
Mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Nice. We don't have any plans at this point in time to ski, but who knows? That could change tomorrow.
It's the main Christmas present for the kids.
Yeah.
So we're excited about it. We didn't go at all last year. And so, this is.
And they love it.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. So it should be fun. I'm looking forward to it in a big way.
Just to get away, decompress.
Yeah.
Take it out on the slopes.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, you're a little more adventurous than I am. We've gone skiing that one time, and I think now I'm at a point where it's like, okay, I've made it this far without blowing any ACLs or anything else. Like, and I don't do it often enough either. But like, so my confidence is a lot lower. It's like, I'm just not gonna push it. Like I don't need to. Like I just cruise and enjoy it, and I'm good.
Big wide turns.
Yeah, and I look forward to the après ski beer.
You're right. Don't blow an ACL. It's not fun.
Yeah, I'm
been
sure.
Been there, done that. So
yeah,
not skiing, but it's not fun.
I'm sure. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Industrious Podcast. Thank you for joining us from wherever you're listening, or if you're watching on the Assessa YouTube channel, thank you for viewing with us today. Good guest today, good friend of mine, Mr. Andrew McMullan from TSI Energy Solutions. Andrew, welcome to the Industrious Podcast.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Why don't you give everyone a little background on who Andrew McMullan is, where you grew up, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sounds good. Grew up not too far from here, so actually in Noblesville, and lived there my whole life, all the way through high school and college. Met my wife in college and at Ball State, and
chirp chirp.
Yep, chirp chirp. And after school, when we graduated, we wanted to move away, get the hell out of Indiana, and we just wanted somewhere with mountains. And so we looked. My wife's a school teacher, so she had a lot of options. And we actually ended up in Southern California, which was the bottom of both of our lists. But we ended up having a great time there. We were there.
Was that right out of Ball State?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like right out of.
And then maybe a dumb question, but like, were you looking for jobs while still at Ball State, or did you move without a job yet and then start looking?
No, so graduate.
That's the parent in me coming out.
Yeah, no, it was kind of wild. So we got married young. So my wife, I did a victory lap in college. So my wife was out and teaching full time. And when we graduated, we knew we wanted to move, so she put her feelers out, and at the same time, I did as well. So she was the one that we kind of moved for the job, and then once we knew where we were going, I started applying. And
what were you looking for at that time?
So I graduated school, so my degree's in marketing, and then I have advertising and marketing, and then I have a business minor, and so I honestly was just looking for a job at that point in time. And so my wife took a job at a school in California, and we flew out there. We had 3 days to find a place to live and for me to find a job. And flew out, and we actually, my mom and dad and Candace, my wife, her mom, came with us. And so we were like the Clampetts, right? We had a minivan. And, you know, I'd roll out of the minivan in a suit to go to interviews. And they're like, good luck, son, you know. And we actually found a place to live. I got a job in 2 days. So the third day.
That's impressive.
Yeah, we went to San Diego, went to the zoo, went to the beach, and flew back home, packed, trying to remember. I think we went on our honeymoon, got back, packed all our stuff, and moved out west. Wow. So, yeah, we were there 5 years. And then, you know, about year 3.5, you know, we started talking about having kids. My wife's from Decatur, Indiana, so we're both, you know, born and raised here. We knew we wanted to move back when we were ready to have a family, and we're both really close with our families. And so we started looking, and my dad, of all people, actually offered me a job, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit, because that's very unusual. And long story short, I ended up accepting, and I moved back prior to Candace, and she finished out the school year, and I started my new role, and then moved back, and we've been here ever since. That was about 12 years ago.
Okay. So 12 years ago, you decided to join the family biz. Was it when you were approached with that by your dad, was it a quick decision, or was it like, oh man, I don't know if I want to do that?
Yeah. Nepotism does not run in my family. So my grandfather, whom I was really close with, was a farmer. My dad was the first in the family to go to college, you know, but very entrepreneurial family. My grandfather, even though he was a farmer, he drove a school bus for 38 years. He sold insurance. He was on the board for the insurance company that he sold for. Very gentleman farmer, you know, not a, you know, dress nice, you know, like very progressive in, you know, in the farming sense. He would have, you know, been considered probably almost organic by today's standards and how he did things. But he coupled that with kind of modern business practices and stuff. His father, my great-grandfather, was a farmer. My grandfather pushed them. They were an early adopter of tractors. So they bought a tractor when a lot of people were still farming with horses. Right, so anyway, a little bit of a tangent, but I was raised by basically my whole family, and my dad included, to do my own thing, and never thought I'd work in the family business. I helped on and off in summers and through high school and college as they needed it. I mowed grass there long before I could drive, you know, that kind of stuff. But but never in my wildest dreams thought I'd work for the business. And we actually, my dad was heading to a conference in San Francisco, and he called me and he's like, hey, your mom and I are going to be in San Fran. Why don't you and Candace come up and we'll go to Napa Valley for the weekend? And so we're in Napa having a great time, and my dad takes me to Denny's in Napa Valley, and we're sitting there having breakfast, and he offered me a job. And I remember like pushing my chair back at the table and look at him and be like, what the hell, Dad? And like, where's this coming from? You know, like, and so anyway, he told me it was for a project management role at the time for some work we were doing with the utility companies like Duke Energy and Citizens and IPL and some other stuff, and you know, sold me on it, if you will. And so, you know, I chewed on it for several weeks. We had several conversations about it, and you know, at the end of it, I had a few stipulations, but one of the main ones was I need to not be the succession plan, and I need you to tell me that. And he's like, absolutely, that's not my plan. So, and as I sit here talking to you 12 years later as president of the company, obviously that's not how it worked out.
Well, he had you at the Grand Slam.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I obviously know the story, but tell me, or tell our listeners about what the company did, on that day when you joined. What was the company doing? You guys have changed some branding and a whole lot of things. So maybe share with what things look like on day one.
Yeah. So this is our 42nd year in business as we sit here and talk right now. So the company was founded originally off the idea of using infrared cameras to look for deficiencies in buildings. Predominantly out of the gate, it was on commercial buildings. That morphed over time. And we've added a huge kind of suite of services that we do. So we focus on the building envelope of a building. So that's, the terminology is basically you think of a building like a 6-sided box. Right. And we pay attention to the details, how they connect, how they're going to work to keep air and water out of the building and your conditioned air inside. That has shifted over time. We've done projects over the years for utility companies where we're going into pre-existing houses and basically looking at them, making recommendations on how to make them perform better. We don't do any of that anymore, and it served a purpose for us, and it helped carry us through some tough times, 2008, prior to that, and but it's not our core business. We can be much more impactful being a part of the process long before the building ever breaks ground. And so that's what we focus on now. We do still do some diagnostics and investigations on existing buildings, but our primary focus is on residential, multifamily, and commercial new construction. And we also do water leak, so slab leak investigation.
So TSI Energy Solutions, as it exists today, focuses on those three areas of development. And then what would you say is the bulk of the services you're providing on those three areas?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, and coming out of 2008 and the housing crash and everything and things changing, residential is by far the biggest piece of our business. So residential new home construction here in the greater Indianapolis market represents about 80% of our business. Okay. So it's a big piece. It's what a lot of my team is tied to. It's fun, you drive around the city and think of the impact we have on people's lives, the number of homes. We did over 6,000 homes last year. Okay. We'll do over 7,000 this year. And each one of those homes we are visiting at least 2 times and sometimes up to 4 times during construction to help.
What does a typical visit entail?
Yeah, so it depends, but generally we're looking for potential deficiencies. So we're hired by the builder to kind of act as a branch of their QC, if you will. Okay. So we go in when the home is framed and rough ends are in place, so mechanical, plumbing, things like that. We're going and looking for blocking issues that might cause frozen pipes, cold floors, things of that nature. We call those out. Hopefully they fix them, address them, so the homeowners don't have to deal with that down the line. We're also going back and looking at insulation and grading insulation once the insulation is put in place. And then we go back again at the end right before the home turns over, and we have a fan that we set up in the house, and we're checking duct leakage, so like your HVAC ducts, to make sure the air that you're heating or cooling is doing what it's supposed to and going throughout the home. And also depressurizing the whole home and basically quantifying how much uncontrolled leakage there is. So there's a code. Indiana has a energy code that they adopted in, I believe it was 2012. And so every home has to comply with that. They don't have to use us, obviously, but somebody needs to be verifying this thing. So a home is allowed up to 5 air changes per hour. And so we're basically verifying and then grading it and making sure that they're below that 5 air changes.
Yeah. What percentage of homes that you go in that are I want to say written up, because that sounds like so negative, but how many ever are written up with issues that need to be addressed?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, look.
And I'm sure, like, from the minor stuff to like, major issues.
So, I mean, it's no secret. The construction industry, especially coming out of COVID and stuff like that, has just exploded. And that's good for our business, but it's also really, really trying. And I know it is for our clients. I know it is for, the subs that we have relationships with, HVAC contractors, things of that nature. We have, a huge issue with skilled trades and just trades in general.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of new people in the market that don't know what they're doing, potentially don't have a lot of oversight. So no one goes out and is like, I'm going to build this building incorrectly or poorly, right? But they either just don't have the training, they just don't know, right? So that's where our goal is, to try to help catch that stuff while it goes on, so it can be fixed. And then we also try to, have relationships with those subs and things, and we're happy to train them. So it makes everyone's job easier if they get it right the first time, and we don't have to call it out and then it gets fixed on the back end.
Sure. Heard some stories, don't know to what extent they're true, because I'm sure they get embellished and changed the more they're shared. But with a lot of the supply chain issues, if you had a building that has a 10-step or 20-step process, and step 4 calls for insulation. Insulation hasn't showed up; it's on back order, whatever.
Yeah,
they're trying to figure out. Okay, well, can we still go to steps 5, 6, and 7, and then come back to 4?
Yes.
I'd heard there are a lot of people doing that, and in some cases, they're like, oh, well, wait a minute, you completed step 7, which means the walls drywalled, but which means we can't go back to step 4 when insulation comes in. Maybe they won't notice there's no insulation in the building.
Right.
And then now here we are in December or January, and it's like, holy crap, this building is freezing.
Right. Yeah, the sequencing was a big issue, continues to be a big issue, honestly. And you're absolutely right. I think on the commercial side, they're obviously much more complicated and not as streamlined of a process. But the biggest testament to that is production builders. I mean, a lot of them are well-oiled machines, right? They put up homes incredibly quickly. They do it well. It's repeatable. But, when you've got windows that are on national back order, you'd have whole subdivisions that, get to a certain point in the build process, and they're all waiting on windows. And, the life cycle, what used to, maybe take 5 to 6 months, from breaking ground to closing a home, now takes 9, 10, 11, 12 months. So yeah, that definitely did take place and continues to take place.
Do you see that starting to ease somewhat now as the supply chain eases, or
in
still
some
an issue?
Yeah, some facets. There were products that insulation, like you said, was an issue. Windows, hardware. I mean, there were definitely different things that impacted it. It has gotten better. It's just different things now.
Yeah.
Lumber's back down in pricing, which is good, but engineered products aren't, and so a lot of the stuff that goes into some of the homes is engineered, and so that's still an issue. But it has gotten better, but it's definitely, we're not out of the woods yet.
Yeah, I think the classic case was, okay, so today it's Windows. Or a month ago was Windows. Then that finally helped ease, and we all feel like we're good again. And then something else pops up that had been fine, and now it's not.
Right.
I think I can speak for ourselves. Some of that has eased, and I hopefully didn't just jinx it. But it still ebb and flows a little bit out there.
Yeah.
So we're about through 2022 as this episode's released. We're through 2022. Gangbuster year for you guys, I know, a lot of us. Especially you said you're heavy residential. We already know some things are starting to change a little bit there. What is your crystal ball looking like for 23 to the extent that you can predict?
Yeah, I haven't found the crystal ball yet, but I'm still looking. It's a little too early to tell. We do have the luxury of being able to see new permits that are pulled. So that's part of our process is, as builders go out and, submit for permits and things, we're getting their blueprints to look over and kind of start the process. It's slowed dramatically. The difference is it's really the way we track the data. it's kind of a snapshot in time, and it's really hard to tell because a lot of the builders really front loaded the year, and so they pulled permits and things. So we had just huge numbers, in the first part of the year, and now it's kind of fallen off a cliff, right? Where they're not sending stuff in. I'm not panicking yet, but it does make me think. We are for sure going to be down next year. How much I don't know yet. I'll have a better idea probably. Into Q1, I'm budgeting to be down 20, potentially 30%.
Okay. If you set aside interest rates, which obviously are a big driver of the situation.
For sure.
But if you try to put that to the side, is there still a shortage of homes?
I think so. I believe there is in certain price brackets for sure, and what people are looking for. Affordability. I mean, we're really lucky, right? We're in Indiana. We're a bit. There's still a lot of new business happening here. There's companies moving headquarters here. We have life sciences, things like that are somewhat recession proof, if you will. And we've got technology and other things that help really kind of bolster, our local market. So I think we're going, I don't know, we'll be fine. And I think it's just a matter of time, and hopefully it's shallow and we can ride it out.
Right. Going back to when you came into the business, you had only been out, in the working world, if you will, for 3.5, 4 years.
But it ended up being right at 5 years.
5,
yeah.
Okay. So 5 years of experience, but you're still young.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Coming to the business, you've been there, 12 years, I think you said now?
Yeah, almost.
A lot's happened, right? You've been thrown into situations that weren't exactly planned.
Right.
You've had to learn a lot on the fly. We've had, as well as the rest of our peer group that we're in, have had a lot of, I don't want to say influence, but assistance or influence on what's going on. What would you say to the 20-something Andrew McMullan today who suddenly finds himself in a similar situation and are trying to then suddenly lead a company without a ton of experience and kind of having their oh shit moment?
Yeah.
Looking back on what would you say were things that, like, man, if I were in that situation again, 100%, here's why I do it again, and here's some things I did that maybe I wouldn't do again or I'd do differently?
That's a tough question, man.
Yeah.
Some of it was, so my dad passed away from cancer. So he was fighting cancer, actually when he offered me the job, which was why I made him insist that I wasn't the succession plan. So a little was known. No one within our company knew, no outsiders. There were very few people that knew my dad had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. We had a lot of stuff going on with the business. He had things going on personally, and he was just a very private and prideful guy. So I think some of what I did was just, it's how I coped at the time. Once he did pass, was I just kind of threw myself into the business. But more than anything, my dad and his partners at the time had built already a pretty incredible business and an incredible team. So the fact of the matter is, like, I couldn't have done it by myself. I didn't do it by myself. And I think the biggest learning for me was to be vulnerable and be willing to ask for help. We had some really good people, and, they had ideas and on how things could be better or improved. And I listened. I had enough of the background knowledge, and knew the players and knew the people. I was invested in it, obviously.
Right.
Without going into the gory details, but considering the name of the podcast, I guess I can a little bit. Small business, like, don't don't think you're you're going to live forever. So have enough life insurance in place to, pay stuff out. My mom was tied to it. So the way the buy-sell was written at that point, she had to get bought out. There wasn't enough life insurance to pay it out. So if I wouldn't have been willing or frankly able to step in, I don't know what would have happened. Mm-hmm. So I carried that with me. And so there wasn't ever an opportunity that I'd let it fail, or at least I wouldn't, not without a hell of a fight.
Right.
So yeah,
I would say that also, looking back, we've had multiple conversations, but you have enough. There are two things that stand out to me. Number one is you have enough, I call it organic self-awareness, just natural, knowing, okay, here's some things I'm good at, and here's things I know I'm not good at. I'm not going to pretend to try to be good at them.
Correct.
Because nobody wins then. And you're just in a fortunate situation where you had enough people around you, a couple of mentors who were involved with the business, and then, of course, our peer group that you could lean on and say, hey, guys, I need help here.
Yeah, for sure.
Help me out.
Yeah.
And I think that's that natural Hoosier instinct, if you will, to lend a hand or help out where we could. The other thing that, and I've told you this before, pretty proud of the fact of being put in, a lot of people would fail in that situation. Pretty proud of the fact that, it's easier today, looking back in hindsight, but the fact that you can sit here 12 years later, gotten through it, and not just gotten through it, but freaking excelled the company. The company is, I don't know how much bigger, percentage-wise today than it was 12 years ago, but it's considerable.
Yeah.
And you guys have gone through a whole rebranding process. You've expanded various service offerings. So, I don't know, without getting sappy, I'm proud of what you've done,
Appreciate
son.
it, man. Yeah. It has been for sure a wild ride. It's, so when it was thermoscan inspections, so that's obviously where the TSI comes from. So we tried to honor our heritage, but that was I guess that is something I'd do again, going back to your previous question. But, one of the things that we did do, and I led, not long after taking over, was we kind of turned to the inside and said, what makes us us? And, thermoscan inspections, again, that's what kind of the company was founded on, that idea and belief. But it really pigeonholed what people thought we did. They basically just thought we were, a group of people that use infrared cameras, right? And that's, for us, that's just kind of a tool in our toolbox.
Jumping in pools and
pools. Yeah. So we, the rebranding process was, that was a whole team effort. So I got everyone involved. We built kind of a core group that helped in that process and interviewed everyone. And, it was a lot of fun. And it was, I really think it helped put a stamp on the business of kind of, this is the evolution. This is the next generation, if you will, of the business. But again, I couldn't have done it myself. I've got a group of great people that I'm, lucky to be surrounded by, and they have a ton of grit, and they stood by me. They could have, I was 28 years old when I took over the business. So, they could have turned tail and ran. I probably would have, if I was in their shoes, right? So,
how many employees do you guys have today, roughly?
41.
41. And then how many of those 41 were there 12 years ago?
So we,
if you had to guess.
Well, I could list them off by name. But yeah, it hasn't just been, we've had a lot of evolution. So the utility work that I got brought on to manage, that contract expired with little warning, and we had multiple offices and a whole lot of our team devoted to that. So that was the biggest piece of our business when I had come back to work for the business, and overnight it went away. So fortunately we had stayed, we were closely in contact. I'd heard through the grapevine of one of the guys I had a good relationship with that he had taken a new role at a new company, and I called him and I said, hey, you don't have to tell me, but just know you've worked with my team for a long time. You know what we're capable of. If the rumors are true, at least give them a chance to interview. And long story short, they ended up hiring, because they didn't want to use any subcontractors. Mm-hmm. So they ended up hiring all but one of my team that was tied to that process. So we had staff in North Carolina, South Carolina, Ohio, Kentucky, so we were about the size we are now then, and we had 20-some people tied to that.
Okay. So you lost half your workforce just from that one exit.
Yeah. And then we've rebuilt. So now we're basically the same size as we were then, except we don't do any utility work anymore.
Right.
So.
Okay. How many states are you guys doing service work in now, roughly?
So on the residential side, it's only the greater Indianapolis market. On the commercial side of the business, we were nationwide. That's incredibly difficult to do. Right. And we've actually really circled the wagons on that, and that's a big push. Actually, something I can share more of in next year. But we're really trying to build in our own backyard. We know the work's here. It's just it's required in other states where it's not required here. Some of the work that we do. So it was easier, and it allowed us to really cut our teeth and build our business. We do a lot of work with the Army Corps of Engineers and things like that at military bases all over the country. But it's hard, culture's a big thing. I feel like everyone talks about it all the time, but I wouldn't want to ask anyone to do something I'm not willing or able to do. And so the challenge of having, young family, kids in school, sporting events, that kind of stuff, it's hard to ship people out to Texas for a week at a time, right, and only be home on the weekends. So we're really focusing on kind of just building Indianapolis and the donut states on the commercial side.
Sure. So scaling back to actually grow further sounds weird. I can't believe that came out of my mouth.
Deeper, not wider.
Yeah. Scaling back's not really in my headspace, but that's my problem. So good on you for doing that, though. I'm anxious to see how that all plays out, as well as some of the things that you're working on now for 2023. Any advice you would give to any other young entrepreneurs out there who I wouldn't say are in over their heads, but maybe have just said, "Screw it, I'm doing it," and going in head feet first without maybe having the prototypical experience background?
Man, you touched on it earlier, but it's like anything in life. Like if you want to get better at something, try to find somebody that is, and just ask them questions. Spend time around them. I'm also kind of a proponent of, it's in this day and age. There's a lot of stuff that is outsourced or fractured business models, right? So some of my accounting services are outsourced, whether trying to own that, a lot of other things, right? Everyone outsources IT and that kind of stuff, but don't be afraid of those, vet them. And they are partnerships, and make sure, when you do vet them, that it's somebody not only that you think can actually do the job, but that you feel like you can work well with, because it's a very intimate relationship. They're, especially accounting, right? They know your books, they see it. You want to make sure that you trust them. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid. Peer group, obviously that was huge for me. That our group's been together 11 years. Basically that entire time. Yeah. And pretty much all of us have had a whole hell of a lot of, life-changing things happen during that time. And, we were there for one another. And I like to think we're better off because of it.
For sure. Outsourcing, you mentioned, to me, I think there's kind of two ways of looking at it. One is, of course, it makes more sense to do so than have your own staff in many cases, especially if you're a smaller business. But if you have all these different outsourcers, if you will, it can be tough to manage, in my opinion. And so I think it goes back to what you said, having a really good partnership with the right fit.
Yes.
It makes it a little bit easier to manage. Is there any one area where you would say, outsourcing just didn't make sense for us, and it was more important to have that in-house with your own folks.
Yeah. I mean, I can even share a cautionary tale on that standpoint. So I said accounting, but we actually have a hybrid model where we don't have all of our accounting outsourced. So we did. So actually, as my dad's health had deteriorated, old school business mentality, super closed book, right? Very, very private. So we had outsourced accounting that had shifted entirely to outsourced accounting. And one of the, first, I guess, like gory things that I had to work through was, basically finding our accounting company was basically not doing what they were supposed to, and in essence, in some ways, stealing. So I had to unwind that. Took a massive write-off that year, and so the model that I have now, there's some checks and balances, right? So like our accounts, both accounts receivable and accounts payable, there are aspects that are in-house, that either I oversee or somebody from my team oversees. And then we also have the piece that's outsourced. And so you kind of leverage, so you don't need a CPA on staff if you're a small business like I am, right? And having a CPA that's not on your payroll and is involved in several other businesses, and you can tap for, their insider knowledge is hugely beneficial.
Right. And do all the tax work. And
yes, yeah, exactly.
None of us want to do.
Exactly. So that to me, works well. And we have that in a couple different areas. Same with, technology for us. We're a very, we're a construction company, but we're pretty tech savvy. And we leverage technology. We spend a lot of money on technology. And so we have a few folks internally that, they don't necessarily have that background, but they understand it, especially for what we do and what we need. And so having them work with our outsourced partners just is huge. And I feel like it helps us get our deliverables right and make sure we're getting what we pay for.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing the TSI story and your personal story on here.
Yeah, you bet.
Congrats again on all the success that you guys have had over the last 12 years.
Thanks.
I'm really proud to see what you've done and how you've gone about doing it. And, of course, wish you continued success in the future.
Appreciate it.
I'm sure we'll be all here to witness that progress.
Appreciate it, man.
Cool. And thank all you guys for checking out this episode of the Industrious Podcast. Again, from wherever you're listening on and wherever you get your podcast to viewing it right here on the Assessa YouTube channel, thank you for doing so. If you are on the YouTube channel and you haven't hit that subscriber button or the little notification bell, please do so. We'd appreciate it. It'd be a great way to start off your new year. It's free, so why not? In that instance, or in that case, thank you again for joining us, and don't forget, be industrious.